It's a demographic fact that an aging Western population is becoming more and more dependent on caregivers. In Germany, austerity budgets and a lack of trained personnel are demanding new ways of dealing with a growing problem. For instance, recruiting a caretaker from Eastern Europe, on call 24/7, always there if and when she is needed. Or perhaps a model retirement home with 24-hour professional care, but located in faraway exotic tropical climes. Thailand, for instance. Early morning at a senior citizens' home in Essen, Germany. As a trained geriatric nurse, Sandra Kladnick oversees care for 30 residents. Many of them are suffering from advanced dementia, which mainly attacks memory, but also affects motor skills and social behavior. Care of these patients is covered mostly by mandatory insurance, financed by premiums from every German taxpayer. The insurance fund subsidizes 3 categories of care, ranging from minimal to extensive. The Nursing Home Board of Directors sees to it that those funds are used to provide the best possible care for all residents. Sandra Kladnick's team consists of 4 colleagues. But on this shift, she's the only one with sanctioned training and is thus wholly responsible. There's simply not enough money for a better qualified staff.
Bis gleich.
Kladnick makes her morning rounds, visiting all 30 rooms and dispensing medication as needed.
Gut geschlafen, Herr Kaiser?
Ja.
Ja.
Afterwards, attendants help the patients with their daily hygiene. Mr. Kaiser is one of the 30 residents under Kladnick's care. Since suffering a stroke, he's been almost completely reliant on others. He can still shave, but she has to help with washing, going to the toilet and getting dressed. It's a time-consuming process.
With Mr. Kaiser, it takes about 45 minutes until both he and I are satisfied. We walk together. He had a severe stroke, and that's why we have to practice. He's also overweight, so some of my colleagues simply can't walk with him. If someone is smaller than he is, it simply doesn't work.
The problem is, all 30 patients will take up about the same amount of time. But the Public Nursing Care Authority's scale foresees a 2-hour time slot between 7 and 9 a.m. with 4 caregivers.
Einmal auf die Bettkante.
And Mr. Kaiser has already been downgraded to a lower level of personal care.
Okay.
Officially, that means he no longer gets 240 minutes of care per day. He's been lowered to half that. So we can only take care of him for 120 minutes in all, day and night.
Why was he downgraded?
It has to do with how independent the patient is. After his stroke, Mr. Kaiser was in another home and he couldn't even eat by himself. Here he's relearned a few things and is less dependent. He eats on his own, for example.
Long-term care insurance pays only with sufficient documentation. Every piece of work has a specified timetable.
A full body wash should take no longer than 25 minutes. Dental care, 5 minutes. Combing hair, 3 minutes maximum.
All of those timetables are noted in a bulky catalogue, but they have little to do with reality. Every person has different needs on different days, and caregiving doesn't always go according to plan. Still, the bureaucracy forces senior citizens' homes and their employees to keep meticulous records. The bookkeeping takes up valuable time that could be better used giving patients the extra personal and emotional attention they often need.
I have to squeeze about 16 hours worth of care into 8 hours. I need to give my patients all the personal time they need. I can't just think, well, he or she's been mandated less care.
But the government-run nursing care programme stipulates that every case be ranked by severity and the care received apportioned accordingly. This senior citizens' home in Essen has done some very unbureaucratic rethinking of how best to care for its patients. In this case, some of the residents are helping prepare the evening meal. It's a bit like working in their own kitchens and allows them to feel like they're making a contribution.
My husband passed away and then I had a stroke, so I need care.
Do you like living here?
Yes, very much. It's like a gift from heaven. We're all very happy here.
How does it compare with living at home?
We're taken care of. They look after our every wish. I've never heard the word no here. Even the cook puts more salt in the soup if we ask for it.
Good morning, Mrs. Kunkler. Good morning, everybody. Looks like you've been busy.
Of course, the cooking group doesn't fit into the bureaucratic scheme of things, which gives hygiene, health and safety concerns top priority. In fact, a large part of long-term care is dealing with the details of government regulations, time and expense that could have gone for the patients. Sandra Kladnick spends much of her shift filling out and filing forms.
There's more paperwork all the time. Here a form, there a form.
The authority in charge of senior citizens' care demands strict quality controls, but increasingly those controls involve massive paperwork. So caregivers spend more time satisfying a nameless bureaucracy instead of caring for the patients. Nowhere in the vast catalogue of official regulations is there a word about attention, meaningful discussions or individual needs.
The only way to make ends meet is to hire additional trainees so they can take on some of the workload. About 30 volunteers also help out on a regular basis, providing care in various ways.
And one of the most difficult tasks is keeping employees motivated in spite of regulations and limited funds. More and more private individuals are finding their own solutions to the systemic problems by looking to Eastern European workers. Most are brought into Germany illegally. Authorities believe the number is in the thousands. Church social workers in southern Germany try to make the best of the situation. Gosia Matosek of Poland was placed by a church organisation in a private home. She has a work permit, but pays her social security contributions in Poland. The elderly Mrs. Kaiwinkel needs extensive care. Sometimes her friends help her out, but Gosia is there 24 hours a day.
Helfen bei Waschen.
I do the laundry, cook, clean, and take her wherever she wants to go. We take walks, but Miss Helga never wants to go very far, just to the end of the courtyard and back. But that doesn't matter. Miss Helga, your lunch will be ready soon. Would you like to go to the toilet? Then come with me.
Gosia lives in Mrs. Kaiwinkel's home, and they have come to trust one another implicitly. Gosia is on duty round the clock. She's just back from visiting her family in Poland, her only vacation during the year. She admits to bouts of homesickness.
Sometimes I miss Poland, but mostly I miss my husband. Not much else.
Marlies hen pays a house call. She's a retired nurse who works for a church-sponsored project that provides Eastern European maids. She supervises Gosia and 9 others. Hen also coaches the women, who have no formal training. Gosia used to work as a saleswoman, but she couldn't find work in Poland. Is this visit a way of monitoring the help?
That's part of my job. I work with my Polish colleagues, and part of the overall concept is constant monitoring to make sure things are working out as planned. Whether they get along well with the patient or what problems need to be addressed. We encounter mood swings sometimes, so I try to decide if it's better to speak with each one individually, or if a group discussion would be more beneficial. I try to take things as they come.
How are we doing?
Frau Helga, I'm glad to be with you. It's always like Sunday.
Shall we sit down for a moment? Or am I getting in the way of your cooking?
Hen keeps the conversation light so as to avoid language problems. But she's also a professional and checks to make sure the elderly patients are being given the right medications.
It's better if I speak to the nurse directly in the surgery.
While you're there, can you get me an appointment at the eye doctor's?
The church organisation takes care of all doctors' appointments and transportation to examinations. Hen also sees to it that Goscha has everything she needs. The Polish maid is delighted with her new bed. She says she sleeps like a queen on it. Organisers also try to make sure that the workers get enough leisure time. Hen asks if it's possible for Goscha to have a television.
I don't need one in my room because we watch TV together. Miss Helga goes to bed at about 8 p.m., sometimes a bit later, and I can watch... No, I don't need a TV in my room.
Guest workers in Germany generally are more highly paid than they would be in their own home countries. Goscha and others in similar positions earn up to €1,200 a month, plus room and board. That's 3 times the wage of a registered nurse in Poland. But living in close quarters sometimes leads to tension, especially for the ones being cared for.
She is demanding. Sometimes I feel as she's treating me like a 15-year-old, and I can't take that. I'm sure she means well, but I'm certainly not completely dependent. I can do some things on my own.
Marlies Hen needs diplomatic skills to coordinate the individual needs of the elderly patients with the personalities of the Polish caregivers.
Und Sie wissen, der Augenarzttermin wird gemacht von der Diakonie und der Müller fährt Sie nächste Woche.
Hen patiently reminds the two that they've made a commitment to each other that can't be tossed out just like that.
Ja, Frau Hen, auf Wiedersehen. Alles Gute. Ja, bis nächste Mal.
She also speaks discreetly with Goscha, advising her on how to deal with the elderly woman's moodiness.
Illness might be at the root of the problem. Has the patient demonstrated they're able to deal with it? Are they experienced? Dementia is a difficult problem. The caregiver simply can't take things personally. They have to act in a professional manner.
The church organisation hopes to integrate more Eastern Europeans like Goscha into the German long-term care system. They receive a guaranteed wage, a work permit and professional stewardship. It's a good way to take the burden off retirement homes and help the elderly get more dignified treatment. To many Germans, Thailand is little short of paradise on earth. This popular travel destination is also the site of a unique model for long-term care of elderly Europeans. Chiang Mai is a provincial town in northern Thailand. This facility in a quiet suburb cares for patients suffering from dementia. 87-year-old Elisabeth Rona had been in Thailand a week at this point. She suffers from Alzheimer's, but is able to walk through the village for hours along with her caregiver, Onanong. She constantly asks where she is. Onanong patiently tells her that she's in Thailand. But within minutes, the elderly woman must be reminded again. 10 patients live in the village. All suffer from some form of dementia. They meet in the main house for lunch on a shaded terrace and appear to enjoy the companionship and the warm tropical climate. Each patient has his or her own caregiver, and a number of them are men. Swiss national Martin Wortli created and oversees the project. He guarantees European quality care. Meals consist of traditional Thai fare, but not quite as spicy as the locals like it. Wortli came up with the idea for this exotic senior citizens' home out of personal experience.
I used to work in Thailand as part of an AIDS project run by Doctors Without Borders. Then I returned to Switzerland, and not long after, my mother came down with Alzheimer's. I wanted to find a solution that was humane and good for her. I decided to take the risk of returning to Thailand, because I knew that Thai caregivers have great respect for the elderly. That's a trait of the Thai people in general. And then I thought that this might be a good solution for others as well.
Wortli cared for his mother here for 2 long years until she passed on. In that time, he welcomed 2 or 3 additional guests. He refers to them as guests and not as patients. He aims to keep their number to a maximum of 10, although the demand for places is enormous. But Wortli has no desire to create a large facility.
I don't like the term old folks' home. We have a main building here and 5 houses, 5 lodges. The people come here to eat, and we've really become integrated into village life. We're part of the community.
Images like these are nothing unusual here. Ailing elderly Europeans out in the village in the company of their caregivers. Employees work in shifts, ensuring 24-hour-a-day care in each of the 5 homes.
Those are 2 of our guests with their caregivers. All guests have 3 caregivers who work in shifts.
Alpine folk music rings through the village. For the patients, it's a link to their former life. For those suffering dementia, old memories often become more vivid, even as short-term memory fades.
This is Justin's room. Now he has a normal bed to sleep in, and that's proof you don't need a children's bed that conforms with regulations. The night caregiver has her own mattress and sleeps nearby. The caregivers are with our guests 24 hours a day. If they have to go to the toilet at night, the caregiver leads the way. Otherwise, the risk of accidents would be too great.
Elisabeth Rune needs some time to get used to her new surroundings.
Yes, of course. Victor Schumacher is still here. He was the 2nd resident here. Actually, he was the 1st. He's been here for some time.
Mrs. Rune constantly asks about her daughter, who brought her here the week before. Where is Sibylle, she wonders. Wortli tells her that Sibylle has travelled on to Bangkok with her sister Jacqueline. But Mrs. Rune can't even remember that she has a 2nd daughter. And the question remains, why do families transplant their loved ones to Thailand?
It's a fundamentally difficult question. It's always hard to take a loved one out of their surroundings and put them in a rest home. It's hard because those people always want to go home again. But in this case, I can tell her a white lie and say that she is here now, that her daughters are very busy and she should try it out for a month or so.
An excursion is planned for the next morning. At first, Mrs. Rune seems to think she's here on vacation, and this is another daily outing. The trip to a Buddhist temple, a Thai holy place, is a highlight for her. There's no question, mentally ailing people benefit from these exotic experiences.
Okay. Oh, we have to walk inside and give flower for Buddha. Yes.
Where are my shoes?
In down there, darling.
As they walk through the temple, Mrs. Rona repeatedly asks where her shoes are. She's forgotten that she took them off at the entrance. Her caregiver, Onanong, is not a trained professional. Much of her care is based on intuition.
Yes. And turn left side. Be careful, sweetie.
Yeah.
Be careful. For me, it's not too hard because I have a lot of person for take care. I have experience. I just have to learn how her habit, how her like, and how her do. Everything what is her like. I must to try and learn her about that.
The works of art at this holy place seem to make an impression on Mrs. Rona, to pierce the fog around her mind. She can even describe those impressions in some detail.
What can I say? I was overwhelmed.
Überwältigend.
There is so much beauty in it, and things that we aren't familiar with because we've never had to confront them before. It's all a wonderful experience.
Und jetzt ist einfach alles ein Erlebnis.
It's a colourful, vibrant, stimulating world, and these elderly patients seem to enjoy it. Most Alzheimer's sufferers appear lifeless and dejected. It's somehow remarkable that here they allow contact with their caregivers without the slightest hint of Northern European reserve.
Off the top of my head, I'd say they can develop a closeness to one another. I've seen it again and again in situations with, for instance, an elderly gentleman and a young female caregiver. Our people are trained well enough to keep such situations from getting out of hand. But I find it wonderful that this closeness is still possible. Of course, people will always conjure up these clichés about Thailand and the sex trade, and they will try to put two and two together. But I still think that it's wonderful if an older gentleman or an elderly woman seek out closeness, warmth and tenderness.
What happened about this one?
Oh, yeah, I can try it.
Yeah, this one.
Onanong is almost done for the day. She's been taking care of Mrs. Rona and now passes responsibility on to her replacement for the night shift. Working times are clearly delineated. A 40-hour work week with days off in between.
Good night, have good rest and sleep well. No? Do you have to go far?
No, far. No. Tomorrow I feel okay.
It takes her just a few minutes to bicycle home. Onanong lives alone. Her family lives farther north. For this young woman from a poverty-stricken mountain region, the caregiver job is a dream come true.
I don't want to say like, but I love to look after the Alzheimer person. I like a lot, you know. That's very good.
She earns the equivalent of about 200 euros per month, enough to afford a two-room apartment.
7,500 baht. Very good for in the north area, you know. Usually another job, another company or something, salary just about 4,000 or 5,000 baht. But this company very good, more than in the other job.
On Saturday evenings, there is music and a barbecue on the village square. It's a lively atmosphere. At about 2,000 euros a month, nursing care here costs less than in Germany. But German government subsidies don't cover this exotic retirement home. The German long-term healthcare system doesn't support foreign institutions. Still, Martin Wortli says the quality of his care is every bit as good as the standard back home.
The Thai people are so open and spontaneous. And then there's the atmosphere here, and the warmth, and the fact that you don't have to wear so many clothes just to go outside. And life is happening out of doors here. People spend most of their time outside. The caregivers have a very physical way about them, and we found it possible to assemble a strong team. Those are the fundamental differences.
But this exotic form of care for the elderly will remain a niche business for those who can afford it and who were already well-travelled. For those who weren't, the culture shock would be just too great. Back at the senior citizens' home in Essen, the concept of a caregiver for every patient is unthinkable.
I'm afraid that just wouldn't work here. I mean, it's nice to imagine such a thing, especially for people whose condition is such that they need much more care and affection. But no one would pay for that. It's simply too expensive. No, it's impossible.
Dich ist das Zigeunerleben frei.